The arena lights cut through the smoke like blades. Spotlights circled the ring, scattering across thousands of faces packed into the seats, each one hungry for the clash they'd been promised. The commentators' voices boomed through the loudspeakers, competing with the chants of the crowd and the pounding of the bass-heavy walkout music. Las Vegas had seen countless nights like this, but tonight carried a different kind of electricity, the restless edge of history repeating itself, or ending. The challenger was already in the ring. Young, broad-shouldered, tattooed across his arms and chest, he paced with the swagger of a man who had only known victory. His name was Leon "Havoc" Hart, and for months he'd sold this fight like a prophecy. He wasn't just going to win, he told anyone who'd listen. He was going to break the myth, tear down a legend in front of cameras, and step into immortality himself. Now, with sweat already slicking his torso from the warm-up, he leaned over the top rope, grabbed the house microphone, and shouted so loud it rattled the speakers, "Chuck Norris? A legend only on screen. Watch me snap him like a twig." The younger sections of the audience erupted. Cheers, whistles, some throwing their fists in the air like they'd just been given permission to laugh at an old god. But the reaction wasn't universal. On the opposite side of the arena, a wave of boos crashed back. Older fans rose from their seats, shouting curses, clapping their hands in defense of the man about to walk through that tunnel. The sound of thousands colliding voices filled the rafters like a storm you couldn't outshout. The cameras cut to the entrance. At first, there was nothing. No fireworks, no music louder than the thud of boots on canvas as Leon kept pacing. Then the screen above the ring lit up. Not with pyrotechnics or hype reels, but a single, grainy photograph of a younger Chuck in his fighting days, gloves laced, jaw clenched. The arena responded with a sudden hush, as if a collective breath had been stolen. And then he appeared. No robe, no entourage, no theatrics. Just jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a simple walk down the ramp, like a man stepping into his own living room. His hair silver now, his face cut with lines of age and experience, but his posture, straight, grounded, belonged to someone who had never ceded ground in his life. People rose to their feet. A roar began from the back rows, deeper voices, weathered hands clapping, an entire generation standing as if called to attention. The younger crowd answered with jeers, laughter, even a few mocking chants. The split in the arena was tangible, a chasm between eras. Chuck didn't wave. He didn't smile. He walked with the unhurried rhythm of someone for whom time no longer rushed. When he stepped through the ropes, the cameras caught his face in close-up. His eyes scanned the ring once, then found Leon's, and the air shifted. Leon barked a laugh, gesturing to the crowd, raising his hands as if to say, "See? This is what I get? An old man?" His fans screamed louder. But Chuck said nothing. He didn't blink. He simply looked at him, the way a stone might look at a wave, present, immovable. That silence carried more weight than any taunt. The commentators, usually quick to fill dead air, faltered for a moment. One cleared his throat. "Folks, this is... well, it feels strange, doesn't it? You can almost hear your own heart in here." His partner jumped in, more cynical. "Yeah, or you can hear the sound of a man about to get hurt. Let's be honest, Chuck Norris hasn't fought in decades. Is this brave or just reckless?" The camera cut again, this time to a boy in the stands. No more than 10, freckles across his face, holding up a handmade sign scrawled with uneven letters. "Go, Chuck." His small voice got swallowed in the roar, but the image blazed across the jumbotron. For a second, the arena stilled again. Leon shook his head, pretending to laugh, but his jaw tightened when he saw Chuck still hadn't moved, still hadn't spoken. That calm, unbreakable, unnerving, gnawed at him more than any insult could have. He bounced on his toes, shadow-boxed, barked at the crowd, trying to stoke the fire back up. Chuck just kept breathing. Even. Slow. Like he had all the time in the world. The referee stepped between them, arms spread, giving the rules nobody was listening to. The fighters didn't break eye contact. Sweat ran down Leon's temple, caught in the floodlights. Chuck's expression didn't change. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer boomed, voice trembling against the tide of noise. "This is 3 rounds of professional kickboxing. Tonight, history steps into this ring." The chants doubled, clashing. "Chuck! Chuck!" from one side, "Havoc! Havoc!" from the other. A wall of noise so thick it shook the canvas underfoot. Leon leaned in, close enough for the microphone to pick up his words. His grin was wide, but his voice carried a knife edge. "Tonight I'll end the myth." The words didn't belong to just him. They bled out through the sound system, amplified, thrown against the walls of the arena so every last person could hear. The crowd roared, half in approval, half in outrage. The building rattled with the force of 2 colliding oceans. Chuck didn't flinch. His eyes stayed steady, quiet, unreadable. The referee shoved them apart with effort, his voice straining. "Save it for the bell." And as the fighters moved to their corners, the cameras caught one last shot of Chuck, standing silent in the ropes, his breathing steady, his expression unchanged. In the booth above, a commentator whispered, almost against his will, "The tension here, you could cut it with a knife." The bell hadn't even rung, and already the night felt like it was teetering on the edge of something people would talk about for decades. Just wondering, where are you watching from? Write it down, bellow. The announcer's voice hadn't even finished when Leon cut across the ring, ignoring the referee's hand like it was made of paper. He closed the distance until his forehead nearly brushed Chuck's, lips curling. "Tonight, I end the myth." The microphones caught it clean. The words bounced through the loudspeakers, magnified until every corner of the arena heard them. For a split second, there was a stunned pause, then the whole place detonated. Half the crowd roared in approval, half in fury. Chants collided, "Havoc! Havoc!" against "Chuck! Chuck!" A wall of sound so thick the ring posts vibrated. Leon thrived in it. He threw his arms wide, egging them on, turning his body toward each side like he was conducting an orchestra. He pivoted, launched a flashy roundhouse into empty air, then slapped his chest with an open palm. His grin spread wider when the younger fans answered with shrieks. Chuck didn't move. He stayed in his corner, heels grounded, hands loose, breathing steady. His face gave nothing back. That silence, under the glare of the lights and the roar of the crowd, became its own kind of weapon. On the broadcast, the commentators scrambled to explain. "Heart's feeding on this," one said. "He wants the booze, he wants the cheers, it's fuel." His partner's tone was lower. "Norris isn't playing the crowd. He's playing time. And time usually wins." The camera director cut close on Chuck's eyes. Still, clear. The calm of a man who'd seen too many storms to flinch at thunder. Leon turned back, impatient for a reaction. He stepped forward again until the referee wedged himself between them. "Back it up, gentlemen," the ref barked. But Leon leaned sideways over his shoulder, lips inches from Chuck's ear. "You should have stayed retired." Chuck's eyelids lowered and lifted once, a slow blink. Nothing else. The crowd seized on it like it was a line of dialogue. One half booed louder, the other chanted his name with renewed force. Up in the second tier, The boy with the "Go Chuck" sign climbed onto his chair, waving it so hard the poster board bent. His father clapped once, then stilled, eyes fixed on the ring with something closer to respect than excitement. Leon played bigger, milking the division. He cupped his hand to his ear, gesturing for more volume, then blew a mocking kiss toward the older fans. Their jeers rolled down at him like stones, and he swallowed them with a theatrical gulp. He pointed both thumbs to his chest, mouthing, "It's mine tonight." Chuck rolled his shoulders once, then stilled again. A tiny gesture, but in contrast to Leon's theatrics, it felt like punctuation. "Psychology at work," the commentator whispered. "Heart is loud, Norris is gravity. 2 languages, same conversation." The ring girls finished their lap. The spotlights narrowed, the air went heavier. The crowd's chants didn't stop, but they shifted, an undercurrent of anticipation replacing bravado. Camera cranes swooped lower, catching every twitch of muscle, every bead of sweat. Leon bounced in the center, throwing sharp feints, breath loud enough for the floor mics. The referee shouted, "Save it for the bell!" But his own voice was drowned. Chuck didn't even glance his way. His gaze stayed locked forward, chest rising slow, as if every second belonged to him alone. The timekeeper raised the clapper blocks. 3 cracks echoed. The chants fractured, some fans going silent, others howling louder to fill the gap. The noise sharpened until it felt like static in the ears. The referee tried again. "Protect yourselves at all times. Obey my commands." Ritual words, swallowed by tension. They touched gloves. Leon snapped his forward like a jab. Chuck's touch was softer, more acknowledgement than strike. Their hands dropped back to guard. Corners reclaimed them. Ropes trembled. Up in the booth, one commentator whispered what many were already thinking. "If Hart can't finish this quick, he's going to feel that calm. And once you feel it, you start chasing. And when you chase, you make mistakes." The other countered, "Or Hart puts him away in a minute and proves we all stayed for the wrong story." The hammer lifted. The bell waited. For one suspended breath, 20,000 people leaned forward together. Noise and patience. 2 worlds about to collide. The bell cracked the air, and 20,000 people rose as one, pulled forward by the sound. Leon exploded off his stool. No hesitation, no test jab. He opened with a low kick that smacked Chuck's shin guard, followed by a fast jab-cross combination. Gloves popped, boards groaned, and the crowd roared like the fight was already his. Chuck barely moved. A small pivot, half a step sideways, shoulders turning just enough to let the punch slide past. His guard stayed high, his posture simple. He looked like he was waiting, not defending. Leon pressed harder. Jab, hook, inside kick. The hook slammed into Chuck's glove and died there. A head kick swept overhead, missing by inches. The arena gasped, then hushed, realizing the old man hadn't been touched. On commentary, one voice barked, "Hart's pouring it on," while the other muttered, "And Norris isn't where the punches land." Leon tried body shots, calf kicks, spinning attacks. Chuck blocked, angled, let them scrape air. He didn't counter, not yet. He just absorbed and read, the way a teacher might let a student exhaust his lesson. That patience burned Leon faster than the fight itself. His cheeks flushed, his breathing sharpened. He glanced at his corner, irritation leaking into his rhythm. Mid-round, he shifted tactics. Calf kick, calf kick, calf kick. One landed heavy, slapping the thigh, and the crowd exploded. Chuck rotated with it, unfazed. The next 2 skimmed off his guard. He stayed upright, chest rising slow, eyes level. The older half of the audience began to stand. They weren't chanting. They were watching. The boy with the bent "Go Chuck" sign jumped on his chair, holding it overhead like a shield. Leon's grin slipped. He stormed forward with a four-punch combo, finishing with a whipping right. Chuck slid inside, forearm riding the strike away. No counter, just a breath. The refusal to respond gnawed deeper than any strike. With 30 seconds left, Leon's corner screamed, "Finish him!" He answered with a savage low kick that smacked the thigh flush. Chuck's leg wobbled a fraction. Leon saw his chance, lunged with a loaded right hand. Hook cocked behind it. Chuck stepped diagonally forward. His head slipped inside the line, left hand brushing Leon's shoulder. Then came the right, short, no wind-up, straight from the chest. The sound wasn't dramatic. A dull, compact thud, like a drawer slamming shut. Leon's jaw snapped, his eyes went vacant for a beat. His body forgot itself, knees stuttering. The arena needed a second to register. Then silence cracked into a roar. Chuck had thrown one punch all round, and it changed everything. Leon stumbled back, hands lifting out of instinct, not design. His smile came crooked, desperate. He looked to steady himself, but the ropes caught most of his weight. His eyes said it plain. He had felt something he didn't know how to file. "Short right hand," the commentator shouted, voice breaking. "Heart is hurt, hurt bad." Chuck didn't chase. He took a step forward, claimed space, then froze, watching. His calmness in the face of weakness was worse than aggression. He was proving the fight belonged to his timing, not Leon's. 10 seconds left. Leon, wobbling, swung a defiant low kick. It missed, clattering against canvas. He steadied himself with the ropes, shame painted on his face. The bell rang. The referee darted between them, eyes sharp. Leon forced a grin, shook his head like he'd brushed off a slip. But when he turned to walk back, his steps betrayed him. Stiff, unsteady, caught in a rope before reaching his stool. His corner grabbed him fast, fanning, shouting, pressing cold metal to his cheek. "You good?" they asked. He lifted his gloves, nodding to nothing, but his eyes kept drifting toward the opposite corner. Chuck didn't sit. He stood breathing evenly, then lowered onto the stool with the calm of a man resting between sets. His cornermen barely spoke. They didn't need to. In the crowd, people shifted tones. Some touched their jaws unconsciously. Others whispered, "He felt it," as if passing a secret. The boy with the sign stared, not fully understanding but trembling with awe. The analyst's voice finally broke through. If Hart answers the bell again, he has to respect that inside line. Because if he doesn't, that same punch ends his night. The camera caught Leon's face, sweat streaking, lips tight, pride warring with doubt. He sipped water, coughed, and waved off his coach's concern. But his eyes kept betraying him, flicking to Chuck, then away. Chuck didn't glance back. The clapper blocks struck. The timekeeper's hand hovered over the bell, and the crowd, once certain the legend was over, now whispered a different thought. Maybe the myth hadn't been a story at all. The bell had saved him, but the sound hadn't cleared the air. When Leon slumped onto his stool, the arena erupted in chaos that refused to resolve. On one side, people shot to their feet, clapping above their heads, shouting Chuck's name as if they'd just seen proof that legends breathe. Across the floor, clusters of young fans screamed louder, faces red, trying to drown out the roar with their own chant for Leon. The cameras drank it all in. One cut to a group of kids in the lower rows, holding neon posters with "Chuck" scrawled in uneven letters, bouncing so hard their signs bent in half. Another found the so-called fan zone, where 20-somethings leaned over the barrier, yelling themselves hoarse at Leon, some waving beer cups like they could pass energy into the ring. The split in noise wasn't background. It was the story itself. Two generations colliding, every cheer and boo layered on top of the last. Leon sat hunched, gloves resting on his thighs, chest rising and falling too fast. Sweat ran into his eyes. His coach gripped both sides of his head and shouted into his ear, loud enough for the corner mic to catch. "He's old! You're young! Push him! Don't stop now!" The words landed, but they didn't erase what Leon had felt. His eyes flickered sideways toward the opposite corner, and for a second the fight drained out of them. Fear, not overwhelming, not enough to fold him, but the first taste had arrived. Chuck didn't glance his way. He sat straight-backed on his stool, hands resting on his knees, not even taking the water bottle his cornerman held out. His chest rose and fell in the same rhythm it had before the fight started. His gaze stayed on one point in the ring, as if the chaos outside had nothing to do with him. That contrast pulled the cameras back to him again and again. The production team knew where the story was. One man red-faced, breathing fire and doubt. The other so calm he looked carved from stone. "Look at Hart," one commentator muttered, already winded after one round. Nobody expected that. The other added, "And look at Norris. He hasn't even sipped water. He's waiting." The crowd fed on the tension. Every lull in the noise was followed by another wave. Cheers crashing against jeers. Both sides desperate to claim the night. But when the timekeeper stood and raised the clapper blocks, something different happened. The arena stilled. 3 sharp cracks echoed. The sound cut through the roar like a whip, and suddenly thousands of voices caught in their throats. The storm paused. You could hear the squeak of a shoe in the front row, the faint click of a camera shutter, the hum of the lights over the ring. It was the kind of silence no producer could manufacture, an earned silence drawn out by what everyone had just seen. In Leon's corner, the coach barked one last order. "Stand tall. Show him your legs aren't gone." Leon forced himself up, but when he straightened, his calves betrayed him. The cameras zoomed on his knees, a slight tremor, nothing catastrophic, but visible enough for millions to notice at home. He masked it with a bounce, but the bounce lacked conviction. Chuck rose slower. No rush, no theatrics. He lifted from the stool, rolled one shoulder, and walked to center with the patience of someone arriving exactly when he meant to. He hadn't touched his mouthpiece. He hadn't asked for a towel. The referee motioned them in. Leon's breaths came audible now, each exhale a push through teeth. Chuck's lips stayed closed. "Folks," the commentator said quietly, almost reverently, "nobody thought the young champion would look this drained after just one round." The fighters met in the middle. The noise swelled again, louder than before, but there was an edge to it now, a sharpness. People weren't just shouting for a winner. They were bracing, unsure which world, youth or patience, would survive the next few minutes. Leon tapped his gloves together, trying to summon aggression back into his body. Across from him, Chuck didn't answer with anything but stillness. The bell hovered. For one suspended breath, the entire arena leaned forward as if tied to the same string. Children gripped their posters tighter. Men in the upper tiers crossed their arms. The fan zone screamed Leon's name one more time, louder than they had all night. But every eye, no matter where it started, slid back to the man who hadn't drunk water, who hadn't looked shaken, who now stood waiting in the center of the ring as though nothing in the world could move him until he chose. The bell rang again. The second round began with noise, but it was thinner than before. Leon charged across the canvas as if volume alone could mask what the first round had stolen. His gloves snapped out, jab, jab, cross, and his shin whipped against Chuck's thigh. But something in the timing was gone. The strikes were sharp in shape, yet soft in truth, arriving a fraction late, their rhythm uneven. Chuck slid out of range, each step unhurried. He made defense look less like reaction and more like inevitability. When Leon's hook came, Chuck tilted his chin just far enough for leather to graze air. When a kick threatened the ribs, his hip turned a few degrees, letting it vanish into space. The effort difference was obvious. One man sweating through every muscle, the other conserving so much energy he might have been walking through a familiar room. Leon tried to disguise the fatigue. He barked a laugh, faked a grin, pumped his gloves in the air. The crowd roared for him, desperate to believe. He swallowed the noise as fuel, bouncing back in with another blitz. This time he clinched, wrapping Chuck up high, trying to show dominance with raw pressure. His forehead pressed against Chuck's temple. Sweat dripped between them. And then the microphones, greedy for drama, caught a voice that wasn't Leon's. "You're not fighting me," Chuck said, low, even, almost gentle. "You're fighting yourself." The words weren't meant to carry, but they did. Ringside seats heard first, then the hush spread like a current rolling through the crowd. Thousands who had been chanting just seconds earlier went quiet in waves, realizing they had overheard something private and dangerous. Leon froze for half a heartbeat. His eyes widened. Not fear, not yet, but recognition. The kind of recognition that wounds deeper than a punch. He ripped himself free, anger flooding back to cover the crack. He swung wild, a left hook thrown from his heels. It missed by a foot, so wide the follow-through dragged him half off balance. The groan that rolled through the arena wasn't derision. It was pity, collective and raw. Chuck didn't punish him with a knockout blow. He let the mistake hang in the air. Only when Leon steadied himself did Chuck step forward and drive a short punch into the body, precise and cruel. The sound was subtle, muffled, but the effect was immediate. Leon's breath hitched. His arms dropped an inch too far. His torso folded slightly, betraying him before his pride could react. His face crumpled, not collapsed, but strained, pinched by pain he couldn't hide. The crowd rose in patches. Older fans nodded knowingly, children clutched their signs tighter, and younger supporters shouted Leon's name with renewed desperation. The contrast wasn't just visual, it was philosophical. One half of the building leaned into silence, the other fought to drag the fight back to noise. Leon forced a smile, forced his gloves back up. He swung again, a right hand this time, clean in form but empty in substance. Chuck blocked it like brushing lint off a sleeve. Then, almost smiling, he parried the next strike with a small tap, guiding it away as though correcting a beginner's mistake. The humiliation burned deeper than any bruise. Leon snarled, cursed under his breath, and threw a spinning back kick to reclaim the narrative. It missed badly, leaving him stumbling. He caught himself on the ropes, grinning for the cameras as though he'd meant it. But his legs trembled beneath the act. Chuck stepped in close again, almost lazily, and planted another punch into the ribs. Leon folded, lower this time, arms sagging until they almost dangled. His mouth fell open as he tried to draw air. "You feel that?" one commentator asked, voice hushed. "That's not just fatigue. That's despair." Leon blinked hard, sweat stinging his eyes. He raised his hands again, but they shook. His body language betrayed the truth. His youth wasn't enough. His fury wasn't enough. Chuck, meanwhile, looked untouched. He still hadn't sat down between rounds, hadn't taken water, hadn't hurried once. His breathing was level, his gaze soft, his presence unshaken. Where Leon looked like a man drowning in shallow water, Chuck looked like someone standing on the shore, watching the tide behave exactly as expected. The round clock ticked under a minute. Leon gathered himself, teeth clenched, and stormed forward in one last surge. He unleashed everything, jabs, kicks, a high knee, but his mechanics betrayed him. The punches came too wide, the kick too slow. The knee telegraphed so clearly that Chuck sidestepped it, as if stepping aside for a passerby on the street. The arena gasped again. Leon, off balance, stumbled past him, then spun to reset. The desperation in his eyes was naked now. Chuck advanced a half step, raised his left hand for a feint, then planted another short blow into the body. Not flashy, not even loud, but surgical. Leon's arms sagged completely this time, his guard crumbling for a full 2 seconds. His corner screamed at him. The fan zone howled encouragement, but his body didn't answer. On commentary, the analyst whispered, almost reverent, "This isn't about skill anymore. This is a lesson. The lesson was clear. Youth had speed, but patience had truth. And the truth was catching up." When the bell neared, Leon staggered into one last haymaker, shoulders twisting, eyes wide. Chuck didn't counter. He let the punch slice air. Then, with the faintest smile, he tapped him once more in the ribs, enough to remind him that every mistake had a price. The round ended with Leon bent, chest heaving, gloves half raised but hollow. Chuck turned to his corner without even glancing back. He didn't need to. The silence afterward was louder than the bell. The crowd knew this wasn't just a fight. It was a man being broken, not by fists, but by his own reflection. The second round was nearly done, but Leon's body told a different clock. His legs shook when he tried to launch forward. His jab lacked snap, and his chest heaved loud enough for the floor mics to catch. He flung a cross, then a hook, but both landed on Chuck's gloves and went nowhere. Chuck shifted once, a small adjustment, and the rhythm of the fight changed again. A feint upstairs, a stiff jab, just enough to pull Leon's guard high. Then came the first clean strike of the sequence, a short right to the cheekbone, not heavy, but honest. Leon's feet tangled for a beat. He tried to answer with a wide hook, but Chuck slipped inside and buried a punch into the solar plexus. Leon's body folded, air exploding from his mouthguard. He stumbled back, eyes wide, trying to grin it off, but the mask looked painted on. The crowd felt it instantly. Noise surged, then splintered, cheers on one side, gasps on the other. The older fans stood, silent but certain, while the younger sections shouted Leon's name as if they could push him back into the fight. Chuck didn't hurry. He stepped forward, economical, his guard high but relaxed. A left hook displaced Leon's defense by a sliver, and the next right hand speared down the middle, grazing the chin. Leon sagged, knees soft. The referee edged closer, instincts twitching. Leon barked through his teeth and launched a flurry, jabs, a high kick, a desperate knee. None of it landed. He overreached, his glove scraping the canvas as he stumbled past. The arena groaned. Chuck pivoted, planted, and released the cleanest shot of the night, a straight right through the center. It landed flush on the chin with a dull thud. Nothing cinematic, just final. Leon dropped to one knee. No spin, no collapse, just gravity claiming him. One glove on the floor, head bowed. The referee was on him in a heartbeat, voice cutting through the chaos. 1, 2. The arena split apart. Some screamed the count in rhythm, others begged him to stay down. Many just watched, hands pressed to their faces. 3, 4. Leon blinked at his corner. His coach leaned over the ropes, shouting, palms pumping, "Breathe! Get up! Show them!" 5! Chuck stood 2 steps back, arms lowered, breathing calm. He didn't pace. He didn't gesture. He just watched. 6! Leon pushed with his free hand, staggered upright. His legs wobbled, calves twitching like live wires. 7! He found both feet, but leaned into the rope to steady himself. The ref's eyes narrowed, reading balance, reading truth. 8! The test began. Gloves up, walk forward. Leon raised them, but too slow. He stumbled 1 step, corrected, then almost fell into the official's chest. The referee hesitated. The crowd screamed both verdicts at once. Chuck took a single step forward, not to attack, but to reclaim the space. His voice carried just enough for cameras to catch. "Respect isn't given," he said. "It's earned." No gloat, no roar. A statement dropped into the silence like a stone into water. The bell rang before anyone could decide what came next. The arena exploded. Ringside doctors vaulted onto the apron, flashlight in hand. Leon's coach tried to hold him upright, barking in his ear, while the cut man pressed an ice pack to his ribs. Leon nodded too fast, trying to show certainty, but his body betrayed him. His hands trembled, his knees quivered. Across the ring, Chuck turned away. He leaned on his corner pad, breathing steady, as though nothing unusual had happened. The commentators stumbled over their words. That's a knockdown, folks. And not just physical. That's a man unraveling the camera cut to the boy with the bent "Go Chuck" sign. He wasn't cheering anymore. He clutched it to his chest, eyes wide, as if he'd witnessed something too large for a child to name. The referee conferred with the ringside physician. Their faces stayed tight, serious, weighing time against consequence. Leon sat on the stool but slid sideways, his shoulders sagging against the rope. His coach slapped his thigh, shouting, "Stay with me!" "Stay here." The arena quieted to a hum, as if everyone were holding the same breath. A zipper, a cough. The peel of tape under a glove carried farther than the chance had. On commentary, one voice dropped to a whisper. If they let him out for another round, it could change more than his record. It could change his career. The camera closed on Leon's face, sweat streaming, jaw clenched, eyes fighting to focus. The doctor's flashlight moved side to side. Leon nodded again, stubborn, though his body told the opposite story. Chuck didn't look at him. He sat calm, hands folded, as if waiting for the world to decide. The timekeeper hovered over the bell rope. The ref hadn't made his call. The crowd leaned forward in unison, thousands of people sharing the same question. Would Leon rise for another round, or had they just watched the end of his career?